Unions and advocacy groups are digesting the details of what's being described as a once-in-a-generation change to aged care, which will see many elderly people paying more. Faced with an ageing population and ballooning costs, the government has hammered out a deal with the opposition after months of backroom negotiations.
The changes won't hit those already in the system, but the package aims to reduce wait times and allow more at-home care for older Australians. Providers and advocates have broadly welcomed the move, but there are still a lot of questions. Tom Lowrey's at Parliament House for us. Tom, good morning. So talk us through these major changes.
Yeah, Michael, these changes are complicated, they're sweeping. Aged care is a complicated system itself, but the government says this is critical to the sustainability of the sector. The top line is really that wealthier older Australians are going to have to pay more for their aged care. But as you mentioned, many Australians also won't. There's a carve-out for all people currently in aged care. These changes won't affect them at all, and they'll only affect some pensioners as well. 7 in 10 part pensioners and 3 in 10 full pensioners. So this isn't a change that's going to affect everybody heading into aged care, but a lot of wealthier old Australians will be caught up. The change is really to the means testing arrangements, which is how the government measures your assets and your income to determine how much you pay for your aged care and how much the government contributes as well. Another big shift is towards putting more Australians into home care as well, trying to encourage more Australians to spend more of their older years at home before they move into residential aged care. So billions of dollars going into that sector as well to help people with modifications to their homes or to bring carers into their homes and to clear the backlog, the waiting list for people looking for home care packages. The why as to why the government is doing all this is those structural problems when it comes to aged care. The number of older Australians is going to boom. The number of Australians aged over 85 is going to triple within a generation, and the cost to the budget for aged care is enormous. $32 billion last year, and that's going to increase steeply along with forecasts. So the government saw a significant case for change here, going right back to the Royal Commission that shocked so many people only a few years ago. And this is one step, it says, down the path to rectifying some of those problems and making the sector more sustainable.
Tom, importantly, there is bipartisan agreement broadly on the reforms, but there are still some sticking points.
Yeah, there were a few sticking points along the way. The government and coalition did try to take a really bipartisan approach to this because of how important aged care is to Australian society and how important these reforms are too. But there were a few points of tension. One was this idea of a worker's voice within aged care providers, a group of employees who would have a direct line to management, essentially, to raise concerns about the quality of care that's being provided or other issues within aged care homes. The coalition saw that as essentially trying to elevate the place of unions within aged care providers and really pushed back on that suggestion. Another was the idea of criminal penalties for aged care providers that are breaching quality safeguards, making serious breaches of quality safeguards. Those have been watered down to civil penalties only, so significant fines still, but not the criminal penalties that unions in particular had been calling for. That said, the aged care sector itself, aged care providers, have broadly welcomed this, saying that the financial certainty this is going to provide, given these changes will take effect from June 30 next year, so really not very far away, is absolutely critical to the sector going forward.
Tom Lowrey at Parliament House, thank you.
Victoria Police will have a heavy presence on day 3 of the Land Forces Weapons Expo in Melbourne as anti-war protesters prepare for a third day of rallies. Stephanie Ferrier is on the scene for us once again this morning. Steph, good morning. So the mood was a lot calmer yesterday at the protest. How's it feeling there now?
Good morning, Emma. Well, we're yet to see any protesters down here, so it's a bit more peaceful this morning than what we saw on Wednesday. But you can see that police are taking no chances. They've got a massive police line here. This is the biggest operation since the S11 protest back in 2000, and they're guarding this northern Spencer Street Bridge perimeter. So they expanded this so-called ring of steel around the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre yesterday, and they've kept these barricades across the road and tram tracks in place here. They have been checking people's bags and also identities before allowing them through, and they say even though we saw peaceful demonstrations yesterday with just 5 arrests, including 2 2 for carrying weapons, one a flick knife and one a modified hockey stick. They did actually uncover during bag searches of the demonstrators red paint, marbles and also rocks that were designed to impede police horses. Now, they also say that after those violent clashes that we saw on Wednesday, that they were washing down and checking over the horses and discovered that horses were suffering skin irritation, and that is after police say some of these demonstrators were spraying liquid irritants into the police horses' noses and also underneath the shields of the mounted police officers as well, under their face shields too. So we're also hearing that they are continuing to investigate numerous assaults that happened during those Wednesday protests, including an attendee who was assaulted and also had urine and faeces thrown onto him as well. He wasn't hurt, but just required a little bit of medical treatment when he got into the convention, one of those delegates that is attending this massive expo of defence and military hardware here at what is known colloquially as Jeff's Shed behind me. And demonstrators have vowed to return again today. They say that they are going to continue their protests against what they call merchants of death and bloodshed for thousands of people around the world. And they have also accused police of acting with excessive force, a claim that police have denied.
Steph Ferrier, thank you.
To other news, Elon Musk has labelled Australia fascists in response to the government's threats to fine internet platforms over spreading misinformation online. Under proposed laws, social media platforms could be slapped with a range of penalties, including a maximum fine of 5% of the company's global revenue. A high-profile legal dispute between Australia's e-safety commissioner and Musk's platform X over the removal of graphic video from a terrorist stabbing ended in June.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will travel to the United States later this month for a Quad leaders meeting with America, India and Japan. Mr Albanese says he'll discuss regional issues and the stability of the Indo-Pacific.
The New South Wales government is investing $38 million over the next 4 years into a domestic and sexual violence prevention strategy. The State Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, Jodie Harrison, says the aim is to stop the violence before it starts. Ms Harrison says it will involve working with schools, sporting clubs and workplaces.
Lawyers for the man who used cable ties to detain 3 young children on his property in Broome have argued their client made what they called a lawful citizen's arrest. Mate Radelic is charged with 3 counts of aggravated common assault over the incident. Police told the court restraining the children with cable ties had a dehumanising effect. A verdict is expected next month.
2 American astronauts in the privately funded SpaceX Polaris Dawn mission have completed the first ever spacewalk by civilians. The American tech billionaire Jared Isaacman, who's funding the mission, and engineer Sarah Gillis conducted mobility tests on their next generation spacesuits during the walk. It lasted roughly half an hour.